Be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And poor Gemma, she sure is getting it in all the worst ways. Lumon's promise with Severance and to Gemma is peace, freedom from pain and suffering, a path to liberation. But true liberation, true enlightenment, means no good, no evil, no fear, no hate, no pain, just acceptance. No judgment, no conflict, just calm. Only through love and compassion comes peace, accepting and letting go of both the good and the bad. But for Gemma and Mark, love is their suffering. This episode is a masterpiece, and we have so much to unpack. So, let's break it down. Okay guys, we gotta start with the testing floor reveal. Holy shit. Bravo to the writers, this was a total shock. As it turns out, Lumon has severed Gemma into multiple different personalities, each one activated when she enters a different door on the testing floor. This is a play on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, a solution to the Schrodinger's cat paradox we've talked about before. It's a familiar sci-fi trope. For every possible outcome, a universe exists. Think of the movie The Butterfly Effect, where just one change in a childhood conversation leads to an entirely different adult reality. But an even better example of this is the TV show Dark Matter. In the show, the main character creates his own Schrodinger's box. That inside has an infinite hallway of doors, each one leading to a different universe. This is exactly like Gemma with all of her doors. From the perspective of each of her different personas, aren't they in essentially a new universe? A real alternate reality? This show has really pushed the boundaries of what it means to be human. It's not just a physical existence anymore, and now we're left questioning what truly defines reality. If being human can transcend the physical and become something more metaphysical, does that mean reality itself is also something more fluid? This idea is reflected when Mark and Gemma were sort of dreaming of their past life together, traveling to a different reality in their mind.
Gemma, where did you go?
Mark, where'd you go?
Now at Lumon, Gemma's routine of eating, exercise, and reading primes her mind and body for going through the doors and switching personas. This is similar to Tibetan Buddhist monks who also followed disciplined routines, yoga, study, and a simple diet to prepare their minds and bodies for different states of consciousness as well. In Buddhist belief, we are thought to be stuck in an endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth, driven by our attachments to things like past trauma, possessions, or even love. These attachments lead to suffering because everything changes, nothing is permanent, so we're left clinging to things that will never be the same again. To break free and reach nirvana requires training the mind to stop reacting automatically, to sever your natural desires and become detached, equanimity, which means mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, an ego death. This is kind of exactly what Lumon preaches, right? Taming the tempers, creating a passive human who is detached from any personal identity or desires, someone who is at peace with their existence and just goes along for the ride. The perfect person to control. And like everyone else who gets sucked in by Lumon, Gemma seeks peace, freedom from her pain through severance. It's like the monkey's paw, an old horror story where a man's wish for money is granted tragically, received as compensation for his son's death. As the saying goes, be careful what you wish for, lest you receive it. I think part of the reason that Gemma was recruited by Lumon was because of her suffering and sharing of these Buddhist beliefs. I mean, look at the whole personality test thing Gemma was sent in the mail that had the cards from O&D. I don't know if y'all remember, but back in the 90s, we used to get this shit all the time in the mail. Remember the Ed McMahon $1 million sweepstakes? These mailers were a classic marketing tactic to sell products and profile people with surveys to find out how to sell them more products. And that's exactly what Lumon was doing with the mailer and cards, profiling people, searching for those suffering and vulnerable, primed to be sold their solution. I think Gemma's interpretation of the card representing Chikhai Bardo was exactly the type of answer Lumon was looking for.
No, it's the same guy fighting himself, defeating his own psyche. Ego death.
At Lumon, we see Gemma practicing the same pose that's on the card. This pose is well known in yoga, called Warrior 2 pose, drawing from the legend of Virabhadra. According to myth, Shiva's wife, Sati, self-immolated after her father, Dashka, ridiculed their marriage. In anger, Shiva created a great warrior, Virabhadra, who beheaded Sati's father, symbolizing the destruction of ego and pride, a metaphor for ego death and transformation. Now, there are 3 main yoga poses that tell the story of this myth. Warrior 1 being the arrival, Warrior 2 preparing for battle with the enemy in sight, and Warrior 3 the swift attack. We see Gemma practicing Warrior 1 into Warrior 2 while at Lumon. But who is the enemy that Gemma has in sight? Is it really Lumon, or is it her own ego she must face? Now let's talk a little bit more about Chikhai Bardo. In Tibetan Buddhism, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth includes a state of being in between death and rebirth, Chikhai Bardo. This state of consciousness is known as the luminous mind, or mind of clear light, representing the purest form of awareness, untainted by desires or life experiences. It is during this state that the potential for enlightenment arises. Practices like deep meditation or lucid dreaming help prepare an individual to maintain awareness and recognition of this clear light, which can lead to liberation and escape from the cycle of rebirth. Gemma's life at Lumon is Chikhai Bardo, existing between the various lives behind each door. However, she has not yet achieved full awareness of this state or seen through the luminous mind. The purpose of the doors is clear. Lumon aims to sever emotional connections in human nature. Each room acts as a different test to reach that goal. It's revealed that these doors correspond directly to the files MDR has been refining. As far as we know, the one file that hasn't been completed yet, Cold Harbor, is the one door Gemma has not yet entered. So does completing a file generate the code for creating these rooms or something? Are the feelings and numbers that MDR sorts pulled from real feelings or memories of Gemma? The rooms are all set up to be like a scene from a movie, and Dr. Maurer, the whistling dentist guy from a couple episodes back, well, he appears in each room with Gemma. He changes his role for each room, following up afterward to assess her physical and emotional recollections. And like we talked about before with Buddhism, she is still affected by her other lives, not able to detach and reach equanimity, as seen with the whole dentist situation. For example, when she sees that it's red dress day.
Shit.
Gemma is dreading what's to come as she knows she'll leave that room with tooth pain. There could be a deeper fear or trauma from a dentist visit in her past, but I suspect this one might just be to test the connection to physical pain and memory. But the Christmas room, man, that room is a doozy. It represents the pain from her strained relationship with Mark and the loss of her motherhood. Flashbacks show us that Gemma and Mark's worst fertility struggles and marital strain occurred during Christmas, including their 3rd attempt at fertility drugs when Gemma promises to write a thank you letter despite hating them. Most painfully, the very last time Gemma and Mark saw each other, she had to prompt him to acknowledge her I love you, receiving only a half-hearted response in return.
I love you, I said.
Oh, no, I love you too, and I'm sorry.
I love you. I said, I love you.
I love you too.
We thought living as an innie was torture, but the lives the different personas of Gemma have to live are something else. She is being torn apart bit by bit, ultimately as part of an effort to survive. In another flashback, Gemma references the story Hadji Murad by Leo Tolstoy. The story is dark and tragic, set during the resistance against Russian conquest. In the story, Hadji Murad is compared to a thistle, a resilient plant that can be beaten down and still survive, but ultimately is at the mercy of greater forces, as seen when the narrator crushes it in his hand. When a leader of the Caucasian resistance captures Murad's family, he switches sides, joining the Russians in a desperate attempt to save them. Like the thistle, he fights until the bitter end, but he too is ultimately crushed, brutally killed, and never reuniting with his family.
I have no idea how you're feeling.
Like shit. Beat to shit.
As Gemma and Mark are emotionally worn down with the fertility problems, we are shown a bouquet of thistles. And these thistles transition to show future Gemma at Lumon, still being beaten to shit, enduring what's behind those doors and the Severance experiments. She is like Hadji Murad in that she switched sides, joined up with Lumon in an attempt to save her family. But will she too get crushed in the end? And this isn't the only reference to Tolstoy. When Mark and Gemma first meet, they're both teachers at Gans University, and naturally they talk about the papers they're grading.
Sorry, what do you got there?
Themes of religious conversion in Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich.
Oh my God.
In The Death of Ivan Ilyich, he lives his life chasing status, wealth, and power, thinking these things will bring happiness. But when faced with death, he has an awakening, like Chikhai Bardo. He can finally see the light of his clear mind. His life has been shallow, he's isolated from his family, and he never truly lived authentically. He fears death because he sees that his life had no real meaning, as he prioritized his work over genuine human connection and fulfillment. Ultimately, he recognizes that true happiness comes from living authentically and meaningfully. And as the paper Gemma is grading suggests, this is not unlike what many people go through when facing a religious awakening, searching for deeper meaning in life and a higher purpose through God. Perhaps this take on Tolstoy is what led her to agree to work for Lumon, that she had a sort of religious conversion herself to follow the path of cure. She's been told her work with Lumon is meaningful and will help people.
It was like the death zone of Everest, like Chomolunga.
Now, during another flashback, Gemma refers to Chomolunga, the Tibetan name for Mount Everest, meaning Holy Mother or Goddess Mother of the World. And in the room where Gemma is on an airplane, we can briefly see a huge mountain range through the airplane window. I think Mount Everest. Mount Everest holds special significance in Tibetan Buddhism as a sacred link between spiritual and physical realms, often seen as a connection to higher consciousness. Chomolungma represents Gemma and her higher purpose.
Mark will benefit from the world you're siring.
The work Lumon is doing with Gemma positions her as a metaphorical mother of countless new identities created by the Severance chip. It's a bit of a sad irony with Gemma, unable to physically have children, ends up giving birth to new, detached lives, becoming a holy mother figure who leads people to a form of religious conversion, finding salvation through Kir's path. And then there's that paper that Mark's grading.
All quiet on the Western Blunt. Drug use by enlisted soldiers during World War I.
Now, drugs are often used to relieve stress or pain, so they likely helped soldiers stay calm and ready to take orders, sir. In previous videos, we've discussed government experiments with drugs for mind control during the Cold War era. Perhaps World War I was an early step towards that. I'd guess some soldiers took drugs almost religiously, seeking peace and purpose amid the horror of war. Experiencing their own form of ego death, stripped of identities, dressed alike, and addressed as a unit, soldiers become just another body. Drugs may have helped them detach, accept their fate, and see themselves as part of something greater. Now, drugs also affect gene expression, a concept known as epigenetics. This means factors like environment, stress, or diet can influence how genes are read without changing the DNA itself. For example, identical twins with different experiences may have different health outcomes later in life. Or trauma, it can be passed down through generations, as seen in science involving mice who react to smells based on conditioning experiments. These changes are reversible, though, and researchers are studying ways to reverse unwanted gene markers. This might explain Lumon's involvement in the blood drive and all the blood sampling. They're checking gene markers for specimens to work with, maybe even looking for specific DNA, those shared or compatible with the Egans. Lumon is a biotech company with a history using ether, topicals, and other medicines. It's not a stretch that they could be using drugs to alter genes in conjunction with the Severance chip, creating their own pacified soldiers. Tolstoy's novellas and Mark's college paper both connect to Gemma's Chikhai Bardo, the people in these stories all seeking peace and detachment from the baggage that comes along with being them, their identity. Lumon manipulates this concept, twisting it to serve their agenda by preying on people's yearning for peace. It's ironic that the idea of peace could be seen as negative, almost a form of pacification or dormancy. But isn't this kind of peace that's free from the chaos of emotions still true peace? Leo Tolstoy is a major influence on Gemma, considered one of the greatest authors of all time. His books often advocated for anti-violence and the promotion of peace through love and selflessness. Much like Tolstoy, Gemma values family and the importance of nurturing those bonds, reflecting a similar ethos of compassion and connection. In a letter to a Hindu, Tolstoy wrote to Gandhi, urging that love and nonviolence were the key to gaining independence for the Indian people. This philosophy of peaceful protests and strikes ultimately played a significant role in the success of the 1947 Indian independence movement. So will Gemma attempt a peaceful resistance? Is there a way that through love that she can escape the suffering of this life?
Very pragmatic. Always had a plan B.
Gemma's plan A was to knock out Dr. Maurer and use his keycard to escape through the elevator. But as we saw, that failed, with Milchek waiting to shoo her back up to her prison. In that moment, she realizes how trapped she really is, that she won't be able to physically escape.
You've been gone a long time, Gemma. He's moved on. Maybe you've moved on too. In one of the rooms, what do you think?
Okay, now at first, this just sounded like Dr. Maurer being a creep, going way too far playing house in the Christmas room. But I don't think all the rooms are so bad. I mean, frolic is one of the tempers, right?
No, then you think, okay, this is the life you've been given, and that's another life, and you don't get that one. Do something with this.
Maybe Gemma's way to freedom is to make something of the lives she's been given, to choose to live one of the lives from one of the doors.
I said I like plants. I love farms.
Oh, good.
Maybe the goats at Mammillion's Nurturable and the plants from the room where Burton Irving hooked up are for one of the Gemma's personalities, her own little slice of heaven. And through detaching from her love for Mark, her life before Severance, she can finally reach Nirvana, ending all the painful cycles of all of her lives. Like Gemma, Mark also undergoes his own Chikhai Bardo.
He's journeying now.
Reghabi's seizure puts him in a trance-like state, caught between life and death, glimpsing the luminous mind in its purest form. And as Tolstoy preached, peace is when you share love, and so he dreams of his life with Gemma, together, bathed in light.
And when she sneezed, she always sneezed twice. Hey. Oh, bless you.
He remembers the little things, the stuff that would seem like random facts to a stranger, but to a lover, cherished parts of their identity. But as part of his journey to rebirth, he must see their relationship as a whole, the good and the bad, with no judgment. We see the things he's clinging to that are a major cause of his pain and suffering.
Don't do that.
Do what?
Tell me how I'm feeling. Oh my God, I'm a little nervous. Baby? So I'm a little nervous.
Oh, so let's stop. You drink less, you listen more.
Mark didn't really listen to her and made assumptions about what she was going through. We see how Mark turned to alcohol while ripping apart the crib, a physical representation of his pain. And he continued the same pattern after losing Gemma, becoming a drunk and destroying her photo, another physical representation of his pain. Their song, too, a reminder of the suffering. Mark must learn to let go of his guilt, the things he bargained he would do differently if only he could get Gemma back. Like Buddhism teaches, everything changes and nothing is permanent. Like the photo he tore apart. You can try to piece it back together, but it's never going to be the same. And he has to accept things as they are, release his attachments to Gemma and his past life. Perhaps he too will choose to live as a Zenny, to die, as we've seen predicted in the story of Orpheus and Dr. Zhivago. Man, this episode was so jam-packed, but there are a couple more things I want to touch on before we go. For one, I did not expect the Twinnies from the Ortbo to make a reappearance. We only see a small glimpse of the work they are doing. It seems like they're monitoring their counterparts, checking their progress with the MDR files, but it's still very unclear on exactly what their purpose is. I've been racking my brain on this one, and I really got nothing right now. I don't know, what do you guys think of this? Such a strange setup, and almost feels like they aren't real. And then the whole goat/sheep theme that's been all over the show. We learn about Rickon's surprising ability to mountain climb in one of the flashbacks. And do you know what animals are also very surprisingly good at mountain climbing? Goats and sheep. I remember seeing them in Alaska, just like Devon described Rickon, basically standing on a flat vertical surface. It's insane.
Did you get the Denali thing I said?
And speaking of Alaska, Gemma mentions Denali, which is the largest mountain in North America and home of the doll sheep and other mountain goat species. Also, in the Virabhadra mythology, after beheading Sati's father Dashka, his head was replaced with that of a goat, bringing him back to life. I haven't quite fully put together all the goat and sheep stuff yet, but there is the biblical connection to separating the goat from sheep, the followers of God versus the heathens, and then the whole Baphomet thing. And lastly, Devon and Reghabi. I think the way Reghabi dipped out when Devon threatened to call Cobell solidifies that she's not secretly working for Lumon. But I do still think she has another agenda with whoever she's working for. And Devon keeps bringing up the damn birthing cabins. All I know is it doesn't seem like she's gonna drop it anytime soon, and we'll probably see the cabins again before season's end. I want to hear your thoughts. Make sure to leave a comment below letting me know your theories. And as always, if you liked this video, please consider hitting the like button and be sure to subscribe for more breakdowns. Also, special shout out to my channel member. You too can get a member shout out by hitting that join button today. Your support will keep this channel going. Until next time, toodles!